We've all done it. Some harmless jokes at the expense of someone else. But how do we know where the line is? One wrong move and you could end up in jail or even get raided by the police. Welcome to another Duel of Concepts deep dive, where two opposing concepts are explored in depth to expose their core similarities and fundamental differences. In this episode, we're looking at examples of trolling gone wrong, because there are many ways it can turn bad. It happens to be fun to mess with other people online. Sometimes it's just an urge to provoke a reaction. Sometimes it's all about being anonymous. Whatever the reason, most people have tried trolling before, but where do we draw the line? After all, trolling is done for a reaction, and what's more reactive than a good old-fashioned murder? Okay, maybe don't troll that way. Let's look at some real-life examples so we can figure out where to draw the line. In 2008, a 20-year-old named Brian took the internet by storm. He made a couple of goofy videos of himself singing and dancing and posted them to YouTube. They were funny enough to make it onto America's Got Talent, but the show didn't work out for him. His real claim to fame came from a very different place. On the same day he uploaded his audition tape, Brian posted a thread on 4chan's B board. The post was titled, "I will pay $1,000 to anyone who hacks into my MySpace account and changes my profile picture to a picture of the Japanese Prime Minister." In other words, Brian offered $1,000 to whoever hacked into his MySpace page and changed his profile pic to a photo of Japan's Prime Minister. This was hardly the first time such a thread had been posted on 4chan. It's basically a norm of the website that if you offer money, you'll get people willing to do literally anything. The only question is, what is the thing they're willing to do? And while most people thought this was just another one of those silly 4chan threads, they didn't realize it would soon become infamous as the start of a whole new era of internet trolling. After posting his request, Brian sat back and waited for someone to take him up on his offer. But instead of receiving a single response, he got hundreds of angry messages. What had started as a joke was now somehow turned into a hate campaign against him. But why? Well, you see, the internet had other plans for Brian. While he'd posted the thread on 4chan, other users were sharing it on other platforms, including Facebook. Unfortunately, one of those users stole the image of the Japanese Prime Minister and used that to impersonate Brian. As more and more people shared the false photos, people began to assume that Brian was racist without ever realizing it was actually a completely innocent coincidence. This accidental misunderstanding snowballed until Brian received threats not only on 4chan, but via phone calls and even letters sent to his home. Brian was even fired from his job because of it. So what exactly happened here? Well, one of the biggest reasons for this explosion is the anonymity afforded by the internet. There are plenty of reasons people use fake names or usernames. Some want to hide their identity for privacy reasons. Others want to avoid giving away personal details to protect themselves from spam and scams. For example, every social media platform offers ways to create an account without providing personal info. The default is usually to provide an email address or a phone number. However, creating an account with a temporary email address is also an option. It allows users to stay anonymous while browsing the site. If you're concerned about what data a social media platform collects about you, you can always change your settings. Every platform provides options to control how much personal info they share with third parties. You can even create a separate account for each platform. And while these are important measures to take for your own safety and security, remember that criminals also use them. Brian never imagined someone would turn his joke into a hate campaign. Even after he realized what was happening, he couldn't shut it down because the person stealing his photos remained anonymous. That's one of the main reasons trolling goes wrong. The culprit remains hidden behind a screen. It's hard to pin the blame if the only evidence is a string of text on the internet. Without knowing who's behind the words, people feel emboldened to say whatever they want, which leads us to another major problem. With so many social media platforms available today, there's no shortage of trolls waiting to strike. But sometimes it's not just a harmless prank gone awry. It's a coordinated attack. Take, for example, the highly publicized case of Gamergate. Starting in 2014, several high-profile women in the gaming industry faced intense harassment campaigns. These weren't your average death threats or nasty comments. These attacks involved extensive digging into the target's pasts, leaking personal info, and even threats of physical violence. Zoe Quinn, one of the main targets of this harassment, found herself under constant attack by gamers who felt upset over her personal life and professional choices. Because of this, she experienced extreme anxiety and was forced to move multiple times to escape unwanted visitors. So what does this tell us about trolling? Well, it shows us that it can go horribly wrong when it becomes part of a larger issue. Zoe Quinn's story isn't just about random internet trolls. It's about sexism in the gaming industry. These men weren't just attacking her, they were attacking everything she stood for. This brings us to another reason trolling goes horribly wrong: the lack of consequences. Just writing something mean and hitting enter doesn't carry any weight. But once it becomes a coordinated campaign involving dozens or even hundreds of people, it becomes dangerous. The more people involved, the greater the chance it will go too far. Let's take a step back from harassment and look at a form of trolling that takes things a step further: swatting. In 2008, a man named Daniel launched a hoax that resulted in the Los Angeles Police Department sending a SWAT team to Sony's headquarters. This wasn't a threat, it was a joke. Daniel called the police and claimed that he had killed 3 people at the headquarters and was planning to commit suicide. Of course, this wasn't true, but Daniel had enough details right to convince the police to take action. Imagine the chaos that ensued when a heavily armed SWAT team showed up at Sony's headquarters. Thankfully, no one was hurt, but the incident raised serious concerns about internet hoaxes. The following year, a group of teenagers in Kansas pulled a similar stunt. They pretended to be hostages at a Denny's restaurant and convinced the police to send a SWAT team to the location. 2 years later, a young man named Tyler went a step further. He pretended to be holding 4 people hostage at a school in Ohio. The police responded quickly and ended up killing one of Tyler's friends during the raid. Obviously, this was a horrible outcome, but it highlights the dangers of online trolling. With just a few clicks, someone can cause panic and put lives at risk. The culprit may think it's a joke, but the consequences are all too real. These days, the internet is full of creative and often cruel hoaxes. But what happens when someone pushes it too far? Remember that young man who tried to hold 4 people hostage in Ohio? Well, he was arrested and charged with inducing panic, a 3rd-degree felony. He was sentenced to 30 days in jail and 6 months probation. Meanwhile, the friend who lost his life during the raid was posthumously exonerated. Such cases are rare, but they demonstrate that it is possible to hold trolls accountable, especially when their actions lead to tangible harm. But what happens when trolls target someone's career? Take the case of Mike Mitchell, a former Nintendo employee who became known for his unflattering reviews of games like Xenoblade and The Last Story. In 2011, he wrote a review of a game called Little King Story that offended a lot of people. One of those people was Adam Sessler, a popular gaming journalist. Adam decided to start a campaign to get Mike fired from Nintendo. He encouraged his followers to tweet negative comments about Mike and flood his Twitter mentions. Adam also wrote articles about Mike's alleged misconduct, which were picked up by major news outlets. In the end, Mike was fired from his job. Now, this wasn't just a case of a person losing their job due to offensive opinions. It was a calculated campaign to damage Mike's reputation and ruin his career. And while this is an extreme example, it's not unique. People in the public eye are constantly targeted by trolls trying to ruin their careers. Even celebrities aren't safe. Sometimes the attacks are personal, sometimes they're political. But the end result is always the same: an attempt to destroy someone's livelihood through nothing more than sheer spite. And it's not just about targeting specific people. Trolling can sometimes backfire when it comes to entire industries. During the 2016 presidential election, a company called White Mountains Insurance Group found itself under attack. A group of trolls spread rumors that the company was linked to a shady political organization, causing its stock price to plummet. The company took legal action, but it wasn't easy. Tracking down the culprits proved difficult, not to mention expensive. White Mountains spent tens of thousands of dollars fighting the smear campaign, yet still didn't recover its losses. This was a prime example of how trolling can negatively impact not just individuals, but entire businesses and industries. The culprits may be hidden behind anonymous accounts, but that doesn't make them immune from facing the music. We already looked at the case of a man who tried to frame his friend for a crime. While he didn't spend much time behind bars, he likely learned a valuable lesson about the consequences of online trolling. But there are other cases where justice wasn't served as swiftly. In 2011, a programmer named Richard worked at a company called 6 Apart. He posted a satirical article to his blog making fun of the recent death of Osama bin Laden. But some people took his sarcasm and irony too far. They assumed he was genuinely celebrating bin Laden's death, even though that wasn't what he said at all. Richard's colleagues were furious, and management sided with them, even though Richard had been joking. He was fired from his job. Richard could have let it go, but he wanted to make a point, so he filed a lawsuit against his former employer. Richard argued that he was fired for expressing his opinion and that violated his First Amendment rights. The court agreed and ordered 6 Apart to rehire him. This was a landmark ruling in the world of internet trolling because it set a precedent for protecting free speech. However, it also opened up a Pandora's box of issues. Courts struggle to understand the nuances of sarcasm and satire on the internet. And companies worried about how to handle similar situations. Ultimately, Richard won his case, but it wasn't the clear-cut victory he'd hoped for. The ordeal left him disillusioned with his job and the internet as a whole. This brings us to another reason trolling goes wrong: the legal gray zones. The internet has created a lot of legal gray areas. Sometimes it's hard to tell whether someone is being malicious or just misunderstood. And in some cases, the truth lies somewhere in between. There are plenty of stories about people being misunderstood online. Someone makes a joke that goes too far, and suddenly they're facing criminal charges. Or someone shares a controversial opinion, and suddenly they're under investigation. Let's take, for example, the case of Anthony Alonis. He was a rapper who posted a series of violent lyrics on Facebook. The FBI saw the posts and became concerned. So they arrested Anthony and charged him with making criminal threats. At first, Anthony thought it was a joke, but the authorities did not. He was convicted and sentenced to 4 months in prison. However, the case went all the way to the Supreme Court. Ultimately, the court ruled that Anthony's lyrics were not a true threat, and therefore he could not be convicted of making one. This was a landmark ruling because it established guidelines for prosecuting online threats. But it also highlighted the difficulties of doing so. Not all countries have the same laws and regulations regarding online trolling. Some countries take a more lenient approach, while others crack down hard. For example, Germany has strict laws against hate speech online, and trolls can face fines or even jail time if convicted. On the other hand, the United States tends to take a more hands-off approach. There are laws against certain types of trolling, like swatting and cyberstalking, but generally the government stays out of it. Most people think this is a good thing because it protects free speech, but others argue that it allows trolls to run rampant. Fortunately, there are ways to combat trolls without the help of the government. Many platforms have implemented community guidelines and reporting systems to help curb trolling. If you encounter a troll, you can report them, and their comment will be removed. In some cases, the troll may even be banned from the platform. In addition, there are third-party tools available to help block and filter out trolls. These tools can help create a safer online environment for everyone. While there's no surefire way to stop trolling, there are steps you can take to protect yourself and your community. So what do you think? Are you guilty of trolling, and have you ever fallen victim to it? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And while you're there, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.